All right. In this session, we are going to be talking about not only what we're experiencing, but also perspectives that we have gotten from employers who we work with all the time. Kevin, why don't you go ahead and talk about the agenda, and then I'll go ahead.
Sure. As Emery said, we wanted to just give you a very brief overview of what's going on. Many of you are probably aware of these things, but it doesn't hurt to give you just a brief overview. Again, what we're seeing, at least the main things we're seeing. We are going to intersperse our talk with quotes from recruiters who we have reached out to about the market and what their plans are. As you can imagine, employers are in some ways as perplexed as students are about how to handle what's happening. But there's some very interesting insights that they had that we will share with you. And of course, along the way, we'll also talk about some resources we have at the CPDC, as well as non-CPDC things that you can be doing to optimize your search.
Right. So, you know, this is no surprise. I think anybody who has been paying even the slightest bit of attention to the news knows that the unemployment rate in the United States went up dramatically. And actually, of course, throughout the world, the economy has been affected by the pandemic. So unemployment in the US was really low, very steady in, prior to this spring. And then when the pandemic hit and, people stopped going out, businesses started having problems and the unemployment rates skyrocketed. The good news is it's been going steadily down since then. Nobody really knows when this pandemic is going to end and when the economy is going to get back to normal. So what we're dealing with right now is still a relatively high unemployment rate for the United States. And of course, certain industries were hit much harder than others. The hardest hit, I think we all know, hotels, travel, tourism pretty much stopped. So those industries have really seen not only cutbacks, but layoffs and real changes to their business model. Restaurants and bars, sports, of course, performing arts, all sorts of personal services, casinos, which actually employ a lot of people, and clothing and merchandise stores. I think that's not any surprise, but it is our reality.
And on the other side of the coin, then would be industries that, at least some that we've seen experiencing growth. No big surprises, number one, that healthcare and all the aspects of healthcare, whether it be direct care to patients or healthcare supplies, even insurance, all of that has really grown as a response to the pandemic. And to the second point, with everyone either keeping their kids at home at least part of the time, or they're working from home, as we are, then all of that took off too. The very platform you're using, Zoom, at companies grown in ways they never would have imagined growing 8 months ago. So all of this makes sense. Cloud computing and cybersecurity kind of go hand in hand. And everybody's buying everything online, so e-commerce went up, robotics and automation. So all this makes sense. This is, again, not as an exhaustive list, but a couple of things to keep in mind. One would be that as you look at this, we all get ideas in our mind of what that, okay, healthcare, well, I'm not in the health professions. It doesn't matter if you're in the health professions. That all these industries hire people for all kinds of different roles. So as they grow and expand, they need to have people in place at all kinds of horizontally and vertically in their company. So don't feel like you're being, if you're not fill in the blank, tech or health, you can't take advantage of this. And it's also big companies and small companies. I don't think there's any, I think smaller companies got hit pretty hard because they didn't have the resources to fall back on, and maybe they didn't have other side industries or side businesses to attend to, but it's really hit across the board, both in growth as well as in decline.
So just this month, McKinsey & Company, a big consulting firm, did a very large survey to find out what our business is thinking, what are they experiencing, what are they planning. And again, probably not surprisingly, their conclusion was that most business leaders do expect large-scale changes within their organizations stemming from COVID-19. 69% overall of leaders surveyed across industries are considering or implementing change in their approach to talent and skills needed in their organization. So what does that mean for you? What does that mean for all of us? There's not one way that businesses are changing, and we're going to go over some of the things that we've heard from employers, right now who are recruiting CMU students. So they might be changing, but that doesn't necessarily mean shrinking. It doesn't necessarily mean laying off. It might mean restructuring. It might mean being more targeted in the way that they are recruiting the talent that they need. It might mean looking in the longer term and making some short-term adjustments that will, be for now, and then looking at the long term, what kind of staffing do they need long term? So even though most or many of the companies are going to be changing, that could mean opportunities in some ways as well. So we're going to talk to you about some ways to, conduct your search in a way that's effective given all of these changes that are taking place in today's market.
So some of the changes that we're already seeing, just from hearing from recruiters and even from students at this point, certainly we've all seen in the news about layoffs and hiring freezes. To Anne Marie's point, that's pretty much a natural reaction to slowdowns in businesses. Doesn't mean it's going to go on forever. But it definitely is happening in some industries. And there's also just an uncertainty about what's going to happen in the future. So if you're a company and you have X number of resources to divvy up among your different divisions, when you get into hiring and recruiting on campuses, I think a number of companies are just taking a wait and see approach because they don't want to commit to anything and have their plans change because they saw what happened this past spring where, for example, all of a sudden their internship programs had to either be canceled or in many cases made into remote opportunities. So that's definitely has an impact on how much money you want to spend. So you might have seen this already if you're looking for internships. As you look on some company websites, they may not have internships listed yet. In some cases, that's because it's just September. In other cases, they're kind of waiting to see if anything changes or things like that. And the way they do business, just about all companies have accepted the fact that it's going to be virtual for this semester. Don't know what's going to happen next semester, but I'm sure they're planning for virtual recruiting throughout the year. And that has implications too, because if you don't have teams going to campuses, then you have to find other ways to reach out to students, not just job postings. You do things like virtual events, or you attend virtual fairs, or you use other sources. You may use things like LinkedIn or other groups like online kind of ways to reach students. We'll talk about those a little later. And remote work, that you may increasingly see companies either at the start of their job or pretty much indefinitely, they're hiring people for remote work, which means from a skills perspective, and I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but from a skills perspective, all of you should be working on making sure that you can work effectively remotely, meaning that you can handle Zoom meetings like this, and you sort of know the etiquette and how remote work is done best. So again, we'll talk about all of this as we go through these different slides.
All right, so it's not all bad news, right? Some companies are taking this as an opportunity to hire more because they feel that if some companies are cutting back on their recruiting, that leaves some of the best, most talented, most desirable, skilled employees available to interview and to recruit. So one large tool manufacturer that recruits with CMU said, we realize other employers are going to play it safe and be conservative when it comes to hiring. We're looking at this as an opportunity for our company to put the foot on the pedal and go full steam towards hiring. So the fact that you all are at CMU getting this really good education makes you a generally qualified candidate in the eyes of many employers. So again, what we're going to be talking about is how to find these opportunities and how to best position yourself so that you can get the interview and get the internship or the job that you're looking for.
So some other insights and quotes from recruiters at companies. The financial services banking industry, our experience has been that they actually seem to be pretty aggressive this year, and at least some of them in terms of hiring. So they seem like they're doing pretty well too. But to Anne Marie's point, I mean, they may not know exactly what's happening. There's uncertainty, but they are planning, already planning what they're going to do this year regardless. And one of the things they're going to be looking at, and I'm sure other industries are too, is diversifying their workforce. That this may be seen as an opportunity that as we sort of take a pause and reevaluate, we also need to just look at the kinds of people that we hire and how we go about hiring, and maybe we need to use other avenues to make sure that we are bringing in a diverse group of candidates, because that's just going to help our company in the end as well. And other companies are looking almost like, you know, this is sort of a rebuilding year in the sense that we don't know who we're going to take on for new grads. It could be the same numbers last year. It could be different. We're not sure, but we know that we don't want to endanger the future. And interns are usually the pipeline that companies have for spotting talent and then being able to make offers to students at the end of internships. So at least one large tech company we're going to make sure we're moving ahead. And again, I'm absolutely sure that other companies are doing the same thing, that they're thinking of the internship program as something that we don't want to just cut out completely. We may delay a little, but if we get rid of it, it's really going to hurt us a year, 2 or 3 down the road. So don't feel that, you know, interns are the first thing that are going to go. In a lot of cases, companies look at it like that's really the group we want to protect going forward.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's a really important point to keep in mind, because the businesses are looking in their own long-term best interest, and certainly bringing in young workers is the way to set themselves up well for the future, because we all know the economy is going to get better. And the timing, nobody really knows, but hiring interns and hiring entry-level people is going to continue to be critical to companies. So how do you know who's hiring? You don't want to spend a lot of time looking in places where, you know, the companies are not in a hiring mode. So there are a number of lists out there, and I have put 3 of them up that I have found to be relatively easy to work with. You can go to one of these sites and you will see a very long list. Sometimes it's crowdsourced, sometimes it's done by experts in the company. Either way, they try to keep it updated, but it's not 100% accurate, but it's a very good directional tool, at least to get you started. And these lists are able to be sorted by industry, by location, by job function, and then you get a sense of who is maybe in a hiring freeze and who is actively hiring. And once you find companies that you're interested in, who you know from this list you think are actively hiring, then you go to that company's website and you can look to see what actual jobs do they have open right now. Have they posted for their summer intern program yet? And if you don't find anything immediately, I encourage you to keep looking over time, because as Kevin said earlier, some of their hiring might be delayed. It's only September. It's already early, except for maybe the banking industry and the consulting industry who hire earlier. But a lot of companies are just beginning their recruiting season, and keep looking through months to come, and you'll see things posted, if not immediately, then in the next couple of months.
Yeah, and it's just something to piggyback on the excellent points that Anne Marie just made. For the TOC, regardless of whether you got to the virtual fair last week or not, wouldn't be a bad idea to go on to Handshake and look at the companies who attended. I think you'd still look at that, because the fact that they spent the time and the money to attend a virtual fair like that would indicate they are at least thinking, if not actively looking for candidates for both interns and full-time. So after you see that list, go to Handshake or their websites and see what is posted for those organizations of interest. But to do that, you're going to need a resume, and resumes are more important than ever, just because since you don't have that opportunity that you would have normally, where you can talk one-on-one with a recruiter, say a job fair, an information session, or a tech talk, or they have a table at the UC. Anything like that, that's all not happening this semester. So they go by just what they can see on online applications. And of course, your resume is a showcase of your application in many ways. So make sure that you have taken a look at it, run through it, update it, anything that you've picked up since the last time you revise it, you put that in there, the skills. For particular positions, for some majors, you want to tailor your resume to that job description if it's a job that you really are interested in or a type of job you're interested in. We urge you to work with your CPDC career consultant, and they can help you with this process because it varies according to the college and major to a certain extent. For some jobs, they do use keywords, so you want to be aware of which industries do that. And what kind of companies use keywords most, and then again, how do I make my resume stand out in a scan that it's not going to get rejected and somebody's going to actually take a look at it. And yeah, I think earlier is better. I would, as soon as you have your things in place, I would definitely start applying. At the very least, I would be looking through Handshake on a regular basis, and I think you can filter it by most recently posted. So if you look now, like I really don't see any internships, and as we have been saying, that's not unusual for this time of year. But I'd make it a point to just have it, somehow remind yourself that you need to be checking postings on a regular basis, and we'll talk about some other things too. But the resume is really the key, because you never know when you might get a friend or just somebody, a recruiter reaching out sort of out of the blue, as it were, and say, can you send me your resume? You want to make sure that's ready to go.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And to help you, if you have a resume and maybe you want to update it, or maybe you think it needs to be polished up a little bit, we have a lot of resources that I want to point out to you. The first one is the CPDC, the Career Center's website. We have resume quick tips. We have a list of action verbs. That's really helpful when you're writing your bullet points and maybe you keep using the same word over and over. This gives you a wide variety of verbs that you can choose from. We have sample resumes by college, and they will be a good model for you both in terms of formatting and how content can be written to be very descriptive. We also have cover letter quick tips when it comes to writing a cover letter, which you should include along with your resume. We also have Career Launch, which you all have hopefully taken a look at. We have a resource called VMock, which is a tool where you can upload your resume and it will give you feedback on both formatting and content. VMock isn't, perfect in terms of giving you all of the feedback that I could, for example, if you come to me, or that Kevin would if you go to him. But there are certain things that it looks for, and it gives you feedback, and you can see what it says and make some possible improvements based on that. JobScan is another resource. It's a tool where you can upload a job description and upload your resume, and it will compare the two, both in terms of keywords and also just in terms of general skills match. Again, we'll give you some feedback. And you can always come to your career consultant, make an appointment, and we're happy to go over resumes, cover letters, anything that involves applying for a job, just to give you a second set of eyes and a professional opinion on maybe where you can improve it or target it a little more directly.
Great. And again, another quote from an employer, to this idea of, for virtual recruiting, like what can we utilize to make it as effective as possible? If we're not going to be on campus, what can we do? And one of its large semiconductor company recruiter mentioned student organizations, as a quote said, and that's all part of this again, focused and targeted recruiting, meaning that if I want students from X major or students that are interested in X type of industry or types of positions, then if I want to try to reach people in a virtual way, to reach candidates, then it would make sense for me to try to tap into these student organizations. So a couple mentioned here, if you do belong to a club or activity, employers use the Bridge, that website, to find clubs. So just be aware of that it's not just I belong to a club because I enjoy it. That's the #1 reason why you should be in the club. But it can also be used as a way for employers to tap into the students who would be belonging to that particular activity. Also on Handshake, if you look under events, there's usually information sessions, tech talks, especially now. And companies, it isn't just all, here's what it'd be like to work here kind of events, like an information session. Some companies are actually holding almost like career center workshops, right? Like things we would do, like how to do a virtual interview or how to conduct yourself or how to write a resume, things like that. They're realizing that if they want students to attend, they want to have topics other than just how great our company is. But that said, if you would attend these events and maybe in the chat be introducing yourself, and then you're interested in internship opportunities or full-time opportunities at the company, it can't hurt to do that. So yeah, don't neglect your clubs and activities if you belong to anything, and even talk to club presidents and find out if there's any employers that they're going to have as virtual guests. Some places do that, or just are there ways that we can leverage our club and reach out to AP recruiters, either through alumni that belong to the club, things like that.
Yeah, so this all falls under a big, broad umbrella. Search broadly, meaning don't narrow your options. This is a year when you're going to want to look in a lot of different places that you might not have thought of if you were doing this last year. One of the changes that we've seen in the marketplace is that if there are fewer jobs in each particular company, those who search more broadly are more successful at getting interviews. It's sort of just common sense. The recruiters are doing the same thing. They're looking for a lot of different ways to be in touch with students. So one way Kevin was just talking about is going through clubs. Another way is that they are looking at social media platforms. They are looking at new platforms online where they can connect with people. Here are some examples that one large tech company threw out there as things that are new for them, and they're trying to connect through students, or connect with students through these things like Jumpstart, Yellow, Piazza, and Handshake. In order to help you, some of the resources that we suggest is we have a resource through our library, actually the CMU library, called Hoovers, that is a big research database where you can look up companies and you can find out information, all sorts of information, more than what you would find on their own website if you're interested in doing research that way. Glassdoor is a website that has a lot of information on it, including some salary information, general trends, reviews from employees who have worked there or maybe who still do. Going Global is something that we offer as a resource if you're interested in international opportunities. There's a ton of information about looking for jobs in countries outside of the US. And then of course, job boards. And I didn't list them all. You probably know of many, but I will mention that there are big general job boards like Indeed that have, you know, hundreds of thousands of jobs listed, and you just have to be very good at filtering them so that you're finding the jobs that are really useful to you. And then there are more specific specialized job boards. So you can find those often through professional associations of the discipline that you are in or that you're interested in working in. And even if you just Google the industry or the job function that you're interested in, you'll see a number of different job boards that will come up that are more narrowly focused on the type of job that you're looking for. So the point here is don't limit yourself, don't look narrowly, really open your mind to a lot of different possibilities, because this is the time when something might come your way that you weren't expecting if you hadn't been looking.
And networking, which is sometimes puts people off, but it is important to do. As this recruiter from a medium-sized tech company said, so it's really, networking is really just about finding people that have information that you may need. It's not necessarily asking them for favors. It's not all you know, who you know to get positions. But again, especially now in this virtual kind of recruiting environment, it's important to tap into these resources. So and under that resources box, Handshake Communities is a great one, and that will just allow you to find students who interned, most of the time it's interned at a company. So I'm looking for, you know, somebody who worked at company X. I can go into communities on Handshake, and in the filters put in company X. Students who, according to their profile on Handshake, work there will come up. You can reach out by email if you don't know them to introduce yourself, and basically just tell me a little more about what you did there and what kind of projects you worked on. How did you get the position? And they may still have the name of recruiter, or they may have a manager email that they can provide you. At the very least, you get information about the culture of the company. So I would highly recommend using communities. LinkedIn with CMU alumni is another great source. We just go on LinkedIn, searching for Carnegie Mellon University, getting our profile, CMU's profile, and then find alumni. And you can do a lot of searches. It's a very powerful search tool that you can use to find specific companies or industries or particular kind of jobs, locations, all those things. CareerShift's another great database that's also available in Handshake to find names of people working at companies, or even recruiter names with contact info, which helps a lot. And then last but not least, the CMU alumni directory, which you can use in tandem with LinkedIn to find information on CMU alums. Most alums are more than happy to help. Some are tremendous help, some are it's not as much help, but still nobody's going to get upset or angry. Certainly with LinkedIn, the reason they're in LinkedIn is because they expect to have people connect with them. So don't feel shy about doing that.
Right, so I encourage you to be proactive. This is not the time to be passive and wait for things to fall in your lap. You want to really go out there and do some of the things we've been talking about in terms of searching and networking, connecting both on campus and off, because that's how you're going to find opportunities, and that's what's going to lead then to interviews and hopefully being hired. This one recruiter, I think, was very honest when they said, we plan to move ahead with hiring as normal, but there's no doubt that this year will be different, and students may need to be patient with us since this is the first time we're recruiting this way. So for companies, they've been going through a lot of change as well. And even just the virtual interviewing and the way that they are selecting people, it's new for them. So my suggestion is, when you find something that you're interested in and you apply, if you haven't heard anything, follow up. Don't be afraid to follow up again if you haven't heard back after, say, 2 weeks or so, because they might be busy doing things, figuring things out, getting used to doing things the new way themselves. So be proactive, and it will help you. It'll help you move forward with this. We do have some resources here listed just to help you sort of getting comfortable with a virtual interview. Big interview is something where you can record yourself, and then you can look and give yourself feedback. Zoom, of course, is how many of our companies are conducting interviews. And be sure that you're comfortable with how to do a professional email, because you're going to want to correspond and follow up via email.
So being flexible, and as this recruiter says from an electronics company, they're looking for resilience in candidates. The fact that you're all at Carnegie Mellon this semester, that you're moving ahead, you're attending classes, you're attending things like this, you're demonstrating that resilience. So give yourself credit for the fact that you're still moving ahead in a very challenging time, I think, for everybody. But keep that in mind as you go through your search, because resilience also can show itself in other ways too. Everything we've been talking about, just being proactive, using multiple sources, networking, being patient, as that one recruiter said. All those go into being resilient, that I'm going to try this, and then if that doesn't work, I'll try something else, or I'm just going to have a plan of attack and just keep moving forward until I get to where I need to go. And just trying to keep your head up through all this, and keep your determination up is not an easy task. But again, I think that's something you could even talk about in interviews, is just the way you're able to navigate through some pretty rocky times. So it's really important to keep that in mind, and as you go forward, just recognize that companies know that. Companies know what's happening, and they value people that are going to be successful in this kind of environment.
That's right. So I haven't seen anybody asking any questions in the chat. I want to conclude by inviting you to ask questions if you do have any, because we can stick around for a few more minutes and answer some. I do encourage you to look at our CPD website, where all of those resources that we mentioned are available, or there are links to get you to them. Handshake, don't forget, is a great resource for you for many things: events, recruiters coming to campus, our career fairs, job postings as well. And do take advantage of the consultants from the CPDC. We are available via Zoom for individual appointments. We often have group appointments, drop-in appointments, all these things you'll find on Handshake in terms of the schedule. And we would love to be able to help support you if we can. So with that, I thank you for your time and for attending, and I'll just have a last call for any questions that we can answer. And if you don't have any, that's fine, and enjoy this beautiful day.
Yeah, best of luck in this year, and again, don't hesitate to reach out to the CPDC, to your consultant. We are there. We have we have extended hours, so we can meet with you evenings as well as some early morning kind of appointments. So yeah, please don't hesitate to use our services.